Welcome to Completing the Puzzle with Jason DeFranco, and this episode is going to be about luck. Mr. DeFranco, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Matt Doolittle. I'm your host. We're going to be going through how you think luck is. What do you think is lucky? So where do you think luck stands in your entire kind of empire that you have?
Oh, fortune favors the bold, right? Mm-hmm. I've always thought that luck was cool, but I've never really believed in it. Does that make sense?
What do you mean on that? So it's not like some premonition that it's set out, or a timeline, or
fate.
That you think, fate,
destiny.
So how do you think luck happens?
You know, there's a lot of good lines out there by smart people. You know, luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness. You know, I find that the more prepared I am, the luckier I get. People say stuff like that. The reality is, it kind of pisses me off when people say that I'm lucky. Like, oh, you're so lucky. Really? Because it looks like a lot of work to me. It doesn't look like luck played a big...
I mean, just bluntly, you've worked your ass off to get where you are. And you can say luck is, it's preparation meets, education and everything. But why do you think you're lucky? Or when you get pissed off when people say that, why do you think?
Because it downgrades the effort. If you look at an Olympic athlete that trains for 4 years to compete for one day, and then they succeed, they lift more than they've ever lifted before, they throw further than they've ever thrown before, no one goes, wow, he was pretty lucky getting that weight up or getting that javelin across the line or whatever. Mm. They recognize the accomplishment at the end of a lot of effort. In business, it's almost like it's wrong to be successful sometimes. You know, business people will compare scores. You see, like on the Fortune 500 lists and stuff, it's very competitive, and even the richest people in America lists. They fight over who gets those spots. But when you're talking with the rest of the world, it's almost like people assume you're doing something wrong if you succeed. It's almost like you have to apologize for being successful.
Right. And so it's like the Jeff Bezos of the world, mm-hmm. You're Steve Jobs, God rest his soul and everything. But like those guys, they look at them and go, oh, they got lucky.
Right.
How do you feel like, I mean, in this industry, we're in dental lab industry, obviously, but like, how do you feel like everybody looks at you going, oh, that guy got lucky? Like, I know you came from, your dad running a lab and everything mm-hmm. like that. Do you feel like you got lucky, or is it just... you just put in the work?
I think I put in the work. Other people will look at it and say, yeah, but you had that break, you had that person show up at just the right time and stuff. Mm-hmm. I like to go to data. When I'm not sure if what I'm dealing with is real or not, I like to go to data. I think I have the worst luck imaginable. I have all kinds of bad things happen all the time. Right. There's always something going wrong. I go, you're kidding me. It's the only thing we haven't fixed in the entire building, and today it dies in the middle of busy time. I think I've got catastrophically bad luck if I believe in luck. But I don't think there's I think luck is just the world. It's just life. It's just things happen. You go and look at people like Jim Collins. He wrote Good to Great and several other really good books about management and strategy in business. And he said that when he compared two companies, one that was dramatically more successful than another in the same industry at the same time, he tried to figure out if luck played a factor. And he said no. He said statistically, were as many lucky breaks for the underperformer as the overperformer. And there were as many bad turns of fate, of chance, for each of them. The difference was there was an asymmetry that formed. The companies that were really successful, when something good happened, they capitalized on it. And when something bad happened, they mitigated it. Usually because they had prepared for bad things and prepared for good things, and whichever one came their way, they could act. And he said that there didn't seem to be a difference in the number of occurrences that were good or bad luck for either company. What was different was the way they prepared for and responded to turns of fate.
So do you feel preparation is the main thing of maybe making your own luck? Like you're preparing for the worst, but you're having, a good time. But I mean, look
hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
What happened last year? COVID.
Sure.
Who could have prepared for that?
Right. Terrible luck, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not something you did. So it's luck.
It's nothing you had anything to do with. It
right.
Came from wherever you want to believe it came from or whatever. But like, how do you? And I know Team Solutions kind of had a preparation ready, or how do you react? Is it preparation versus reaction?
Well, there you go. So we didn't have to stop the way some people had to stop because we had prepared for bad times. We still got hurt significantly, but we had prepared for bad times, so we were better equipped to cope when bad luck struck. But then what do you do with it? We are a way better company today than we were a year ago because when all of those things happened, we responded. We changed things. We shifted gears. We looked at other opportunities. We tried to make the place better. If it wasn't going to be full of work, then let's clean it up. Let's make it work better so that when it's full of work again, it's a better job being done than before. And there are lots of companies that did not survive. And there are companies that barely survived that are trying to get back on their feet right now. And there are companies that came out of it, beaten and bloodied, but stood back up and charged forward again. We're in that last group, which is really cool. But it's not because we were lucky. We had the same bad luck everybody else had. We were a little bit better prepared than some. And we responded with, no, this is a challenge. This is not the end. This is not something to moan and groan over. This is something to understand, to deal with, to move past, to learn from.
Do you feel like your employees have that feeling that, okay, our owners, our people that, write our checks and everything, had that momentum and they felt that?
Oh, absolutely. That's part of why people have faith. Faith is belief in something for which there's no evidence. So that's not really the right term here. But they see enough evidence of things that they know it's going to be okay. They know they're not going to be abandoned because bad luck hits, because there's a storm. In a storm, we huddle together, we batten down the hatches, we work through it together. We don't just start tossing people overboard because it's dangerous,
Are you aware of how quote unquote lucky you are, or how you have been, or how you've kind of gone through all these issues over the years? Like, are you aware of that, or do you just kind of brush it off and go, I just keep going on to the next step?
I tend to keep moving. I don't tend to dwell on things. I look for a lesson. Something bad happens. Hey, could we have been better prepared? Did we do something wrong? Is this something of our own making? Is my first question. If it is, let's not make this again. If it isn't, are we prepared to deal with this unfortunate happening? If we're not, could we have been?
Well, to go back to the COVID situation, what do you think you could have, looking back on that, and you were very lucky to get through that. And,
lucky, there it is.
I mean, you hired me during the pandemic. You hired a lot of people during the pandemic. You kept, you brought people back off furlough. What do you think you could look at, and this is to everybody out there that as a business owner, what do you think you could have done better?
Better nest egg. More money. We had a good amount of money set aside. More. Always have more money available.
Just to be ready?
For bad times. Because if the bad times are like that, some people will make it through and some people won't. If you're one of the people that makes it through, you're in an even better position in terms of continuing to grow and protect your business. If you don't make it through the lean year, you've got problems.
So do you feel like that was a lucky situation, or do you feel like it was a preparedness kind of lucky?
It has to be preparedness. It has to be. Because if it's luck, then you're not taking any action of your own. Luck is waiting and hoping. We don't wait and hope. We go make things happen.
If you looked at other companies out there, where do you think they kind of made the misstep? I mean, not having funds ready to go or not being ready with their employees. Where do you kind of feel like if you look at other, dental labs, companies, manufacturing companies, I mean, overall, it's a manufacturing company as you
right.
Go to the bare bones.
We make things.
Where do you feel like they kind of misstepped as far as, we're just going to lay everybody off and then we'll figure it out, or not making enhancements or anything like that?
Well, that's what you just said. We'll just lay everybody off and then figure it out is a flawed concept, because the people are the company. So it's like cutting off parts of your body and saying, I'll figure out what's wrong with me later. Right now, I'll chop off my arm. You need to diagnose first and treat second. And, again, This was catastrophic. This was worldwide.
Well, it was something
This wasn't
nobody
just
could
a little
predict. You
tick in
can't
the
predict something like
right.
that.
This wasn't some little tick in the economy or something. This was dramatic. I'm not saying there's something wrong with people if their company suffered during that time, because everybody did. But the idea of being prepared and setting aside enough money for lean times, the idea of looking at something realistically, as soon as we heard how bad it sounded like it was getting in Asia, we sourced all of our materials to make sure we knew.
So you looked at it early in that sense, going, oh, that's
How
not-
can this impact us, even if none of us get sick here? How can this impact us? Well, many supplies are manufactured in Asia for all kinds of different companies. So we had to look, is any of our stuff made in places that are being hit by this that will impact our supplies? And yeah, there were. We immediately started buying supplies from those places and looking for alternate sources for those supplies so that we would minimize how bad it was going to be when it got to us. We didn't put our head in the sand. We said, this could be bad. What are the different ways this could affect us? What are the things we can do to prepare? Don't just wait and watch. Start doing things. Even if you're not sure what to do, taking any action in a situation like that gets you off your butt, gets you thinking about what to do next. But the idea of just sending everybody home and then trying to figure it out is flawed. They're part of it. They're part of the situation. They're part of the company. It's their lives too. They may not own it, but it's their lives too. They have to be involved in that conversation. You have to be thinking about what gets the most of us through this safely, not just what protects the company. I mean, if the company goes under, it hurts everybody. But it can't be just about protecting the bottom line. It has to be about protecting the institution, which is the culture, the people. There's more to it than just the bank account. And when you come through something like that, everybody remembers. Everybody remembers that even when it got rough, nobody was tossed out, nobody was forgotten, nobody was left behind.
And that was the reaction from the employees and everybody that,
Oh, yeah.
looks at, they go, hey boss, is everything going to be okay? And that was kind of their reaction.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, an organizational luck? I mean, yeah, you guys prepare and everything. Like, how has the organization been lucky? I mean, in a dental lab industry, like you've said over the years, you've said it in the past, your dad was like, I don't want you to go in this. I'm going to break your fingers before you get into doing anything with your hands and everything like that. Like, how do you feel like the organization between you and Chad, who kind of founded this, and, Borden, who put, you guys have all built this thing up. How do you guys feel like you've been lucky as an organization?
We've had good luck and bad luck. We have...
What's been the bad luck part?
Oh, man. Endless things. Moving into a new building. The story of moving into this building was crazy because we knew we needed to move to a larger space. We came and looked at this location and decided it was way too big for us. Decided we needed something between the two sizes of where we were and this. We found another building that was in between the two. We went to build out the space to use as a dental laboratory, and we ended up getting pushback when we filed for our permits. Now, we had checked zoning and made sure that everything was appropriate and whatnot. It turned out that the plans for the building we were going to occupy had been destroyed in a fire at the county records years before. So they didn't have a current plan on file for the building. And they couldn't be sure the building was built to code for what we wanted to do inside of it.
And this was Seminole County, Florida.
Yeah.
So everybody knows we're based out of Seminole County, Florida.
So they said, we're going to need you to go and have an architect do a schematics of this building. We're going to need to evaluate whether this building can house the kind of business that you do. And we had no way of knowing that. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, we're $40,000 in the hole and 3 months behind schedule getting into our new space. And we were bursting at the seams already at our old space. It was impacting our ability to do our work. And no way to predict that. So we decided we couldn't buy that building and or couldn't lease that space. And the landlord said, too bad. And up to that point, we'd had great conversations with the landlord, thought he was very accommodating and everything. And I went to him and said, look, because of these restrictions from the county, it's going to take way too long and cost way too much money to get through this to be able to actually move into the space. We can't afford to wait 6 months to move into a new space, and we can't pay for a space we can't use. Now, we have a lease. I want to talk about this. I want to figure out an accommodation that's fair to both of us. Both of us have lost something on this. Let's talk this through. And this landlord, who up until that point had been very open to just very frank conversations of let's work things out, said, "No, you've got a 5-year lease. I expect you to pay me 5 years." And I said, I understand we have to break the lease, and there's going to be a cost associated with that. And I want you to be whole at the end of this. I don't want you to suffer. I'm willing to make some kind of a deal. We'll pay until you find another tenant or this, that, or the other. And he just said, no, you have a 5-year lease. If you'd like to break your lease, pay me for all 5 years now, and we'll close the lease. And I was flabbergasted.
That's not how that works.
I was flabbergasted. Well, it depends on how the lease is written.
That's true.
We'd signed a contract that essentially said that. And so one bad break after another, a fire at the county, talked with a senior person at the county about what we wanted to do in the building, and got a verbal response from this person that it will be fine, go ahead and submit your plans. Mm-hmm. Submitted the plans, and a different person was sitting in that chair by then. The new person sitting in that chair said, no, not fine. And I'm like, but we did all of this verbally first to make sure we're going in the right direction, because we don't do this every day. And he said, I get it, but I'm not approving it. You're going to have to go back to the drawing board. You're going to have to get me full architecturals on the building. You're going to have to do all these other things. And we're like, we can't afford to do all of that. We're not a huge company. Mm-hmm. And so it was just one thing after another, this person not being there, the fire, the landlord's change of heart, just one thing after another that worked against us all the way through the process.
Do you feel like they almost got bored with the whole thing and they didn't care? Or was it one of those where they're just like, whatever?
I don't know. I think different people have different jobs. I think the people in that kind of a job have a very narrow description of their job. And that description isn't to help people get things done. That description is to handle the paperwork the way it's supposed to be handled. So I don't think anybody did anything wrong. It wasn't a very friendly experience. It wasn't something that could help us.
Nothing that could help you, but so you say help. And did that luckily force you into where we are now?
It did. We ended up having to look back, and now we're really in a bind.
Because this facility is amazing.
Yeah.
It almost fits everything you need. So did you feel like you got lucky?
Sure.
Ending up here?
Yeah, because by the end, we're now 8 months behind schedule, and we've got to find a place now that we can move into. This is taking too long. This is a mess. And we walked back into this building. We're like, oh, yeah, we looked at this one. And actually, it's a year later now. This is just about the right size for us now. And moved in, got everything up and running. We moved into 1/3 of the building. 3 months later, the tenant that occupied another third of the building was moving out. We took over that third of the building. About 3 months after that, the landlord kicked out a tenant in the remaining third of the building and asked us if we wanted it. I'm like, wow, that was perfect. That just worked perfectly. We built out what we needed and then expanded, built out what we needed, expanded, built out what we needed. It was phased. It was great. Mm-hmm. It was just a perfect timing thing. Well, that's luck. Is it?
It's preparedness. But then also, now, just so everybody out there knows, Team Solutions owns this entire building. Mm-hmm. And then you just bought a place next door. Mm-hmm. And was that luck of chance, or how did that come about?
We asked.
It's right next door.
We asked. We got a realtor and said, hey, ask the guy next door what he thinks about selling this building. People don't do that. Oh, it's not for sale. Well, so what? Everything's for sale. Mm-hmm. It depends on timing and value. And
Everybody's got a price.
It's all about timing and value. Mm-hmm. And this person wasn't quite ready to move out, but he was close. And it was enough that we could have some conversations and get to that point. And, was that luck? Or was that us looking for luck's a funny thing. There are filters we have in our lives. I read one of those self-help books one time that says, whether you believe you have good luck or whether you believe you have bad luck, you're right. It's whatever you believe.
one or the other.
It's what you make of it. If you think you're unlucky, you are now. If you think you're lucky, you are now, because you're seeing the cup is half full or half empty. But you've got like a filter that you see through. What's your luck dar? Your radar for luck. Are you scanning the horizon for opportunities? Are you looking for things that could go your way?
And is that the main thing, looking for opportunities as you, whatever you want to put out there as luck or whatever, is it seeing an opportunity and then engaging in it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You've got the awareness, then you've got the readiness with the building next door. With this building, we were tenants for almost 2 years before we bought it. Mm-hmm. Well, when we bought it, it was a fantastic deal for everybody involved. There were some political things going on with the company that owned the building. There'd been a change of ownership and a death in the family. And for them, the timing was right to divest a couple of properties for their sake, for the simplicity of their operations. And this was one of the properties they would prefer to sell. It was right in the middle of COVID, so people wanted cash, needed cash, and their company was hurting from people not being able to pay their rent. We were still paying our rent. So for us to be able to walk up and say, we can buy the building within 60 days for this price. Do you want to do this? And he said, absolutely, that's great for me. And it was a great price for us. We got a building that we had already functionally built out for our use, and we didn't have to move, relocate, do all those kinds of things. We got to make changes to the building once we owned it to make it even more of what we needed it to be. Just the timing was great, the price was great.
Was created, based off of that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so there was the awareness of, is this something we could do? There was the readiness, we had good credit. We had done well in terms of managing the crisis of COVID. It was closer to the fall now. It was clear we had come through the crisis period of the shutdown, and we're getting back ramped up. So it was clear that our business was continuing on. We had good negotiations with the owner of the building. We had a good relationship with him. He was willing to just have a conversation instead of making it a formal or adversarial process like it can be sometimes. It was a collaborative one. What would work for you timing-wise?
For a business owner out there who's starting out, do you think that that's kind of a key is knowing who owns your space and having a good relationship and replying to their phone calls and everything?
Never pays to have a bad relationship with anybody. With anybody.
Yeah.
Up until we moved out of our first space, we had a very good relationship with our landlord. And then he tried to screw us. So then we had a very bad relationship. And that was the first thing I said to him was, we have been very good tenants.
How did you realize he was throwing a screw job on
you? We had a clause in our lease that we had to give 90 days notice that we were going to be moving out when the lease ended or it auto-renewed. Mm-hmm. I gave him more than 90 days. I gave him almost 6 months notice that we were outgrowing the space and would be moving out. I wanted to give him advance notice, so if he wanted people to come in and see the space, show it to other people, he would have time to do that. So I gave him 6 months notice. We got down to the last month, and I contacted him to do a walkthrough, after we moved everything out. And he said, what are you talking about? You're not moving out. Your lease renewed. I said, oh, no, I've told you verbally 3 or 4 times this year, and I sent you a letter telling you when we were moving out. I had it on record. I had all the documentation. And he says, no, see, there's a problem there. You sent that to me 6 months ago. I said, yeah. He says, you needed to tell me 90 days before you moved out. I said, I told you more than 90 days. He says, that doesn't count. You needed to send me a letter exactly 90 days prior to your move out. It needed to be July 13th, you needed to send me the letter. I said, I sent it to you back in March or April. He said, right, that wasn't July. Like, according to him, if I didn't tell him on the day, he was being ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we had a fear that would happen because we had seen him in screaming matches with every tenant who ever moved out. Mm-hmm. And he literally tried to tell us we didn't have the right to cancel our lease unless we did it on a single day of the year. And I'm like, I told you 6 months in advance we would not be renewing the lease. And he literally told me that wasn't 90 days. You had to do it at 90 days, not 180 days, not 120 days, not 95 days. 90 days is the only day. It's the only day of the year you're allowed to tell me you're not renewing your lease. And I was like, what? Then He went through and made this ridiculous laundry list. He basically wanted us to renovate and upgrade his building. Like, we had taken it over. It was practically an abandoned building. He was parking lawn equipment inside the building in the suite that we took over, okay? There was gasoline on the floor. It was terrible. It was probably illegal, but it was terrible. And we came in, we painted the walls, we refinished the floors, we did all this stuff. And he came in and he's like, those scuffs on the wall, it needs to be repainted. I'm like, no, we need to return it to the condition it was when we moved in. The condition when we moved in was uninhabitable. You're getting an upgrade already. It's been freshly painted. The floors have been done. What are you talking about? And he's like, no. You need to put it back the color it was. I'm like, lime green? Because it was some horrible, awful
miserable,
thing.
cigarette color.
Yeah, it was awful. And I'm like, do we need to put the gasoline stains on the floor again? Because that's what it was, it was this kind of crazy stuff. And he says, okay, I'll have my people repaint it and stuff. And it was a 2,400 square foot space. And he says, I'm going to need $26,000, from you for moving out, leaving it in this condition. I'm like,
that ain't going to happen.
What are you talking about? What condition? This place looks way better than when we moved in. And I had pictures because I'd taken pictures. And I sent him all the pictures. And he says, no, that's not what it looked like. You photoshopped the old pictures to make it look worse than it was and stuff.
He pulled the Photoshop card.
And finally I called an attorney because I'm like, I don't know what I'm dealing with here. And the attorney's like, this guy is nuts. You don't have to do a darn thing. You have lived up to more than your share of the obligations of the lease. We even did some minor repairs to the place that would be considered normal wear and tear before we moved out because we didn't want to leave him a place he couldn't rent again. Oh, wow. But, unless something like that happens, I want a good relationship with everybody.
How would you say to a new business owner out there, somebody looking for a new space, what would you say would, for the luck of, getting out of there and you having an attorney and the luck of, showing up where you are now, what would you say to somebody going into a situation like that again? Obviously, you may need to expand. You may need to get another building. You just bought another building. You may buy another building. Going into that, what would you tell a business owner to do?
Pay for a lawyer. Have a lawyer read the lease.
Worth it?
It's absolutely worth it. You don't sign something if a lawyer hasn't read it first. Because once you've signed it, you've signed it. And there may be things in there that are patently illegal. But if it's written cleverly, they'll get away with it, or they'll just get those things eliminated. You could be signing anything. And there's so many ways you can get in trouble with that. That's just not worth it.
It's the difference between a the and a that.
Sure.
As you go through contracts and everything, it's the and that are two different terms.
Common sense and legal verbiage are two radically different things. You read it, that sounds right, doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it hasn't obligated you to something you don't understand if you don't have a lawyer look at it.
Right. So who would you look at as, kind of the luckiest man on earth? Like the guy that has everything together. You think you're marrying the perfect woman, you're going to have the perfect kids, you're going to have the perfect car, house, lawn, it's going to be the Brady Bunch. What would you look at as being the luckiest guy on earth?
I don't know. Richard Branson?
You know what? That's true. You know what? I'll give it that.
But is it? So I've got
their problems.
I've got a joke I tell, if Richard Branson opened an ice cream shop, it would be a hit. Everybody would go there. So people say, he's got the Midas touch. Everything he touched turns to gold. That he can make a company of anything and be very successful at it. But a portion of that is his personal branding. It's, Richard Branson's a smart guy who's made a lot of money with a lot of different kinds of companies. Apparently he knows what he's doing, so I'm going to assume that what he's doing is a good idea. He opens an ice cream shop. I'm going to go check out that ice cream because he's doing it. There must be something here. There must be an angle. Yeah. And he's going to, land on top of the building from, parachuting out of a plane the first opening day to create a sensation. And now there's a phenomenally successful ice cream shop. Is their ice cream any better than the shop down the street? Maybe not. Did they just get lucky? Or is it a reputation he has cultivated over decades for success?
So it's a push to being lucky.
Create your own luck. Where does luck figure in? Were we lucky to figure out that doing something more efficiently, getting it done in less time was a good idea?
Maybe. I mean, and it all goes all the way down the supply chain of this worked on that part and this helped that area. And if you want to look at it as a luck thing, I mean, that's preparedness. That's looking at the company overall. Like, oh, we were lucky that case didn't get messed up. Like, when you look at something like that, or you start going through the entire supply chain type thing, because it is a manufacturing business. Do you feel like you've been lucky in some areas, or gone, this is why we prepared for that to happen? If there's an issue, say from milling to another section, oh, we were lucky. We prepared for that issue to happen.
We were lucky in a couple of things, and I'll call it luck, because we didn't operate from knowledge. The first couple of mills that we bought were fantastic machines, and we didn't know that before we bought them. We hoped, we trusted what the manufacturer was saying. But at that time, in that category and price range, there were a dozen different units we could have purchased. And looking back today, 8 out of those 12 would have been a terrible mistake. They all looked good from the outside. We didn't have a lot of data to draw upon.
So you have like a 20% success rate on those.
So we picked one that turned out to be one of the good ones. And nobody knew yet because they were all pretty new. There wasn't a track record. You couldn't look at reliability data going back 5 years. These things had just been put on the market in the last 24 months. So there's a very limited amount of information. So we had to make a decision without having all the facts that we would have liked to have had. And we got lucky because the majority of mills in that price and size category did not do as well as the ones we bought. It was the same thing with the sintering ovens. We happened to pick, now we had narrowed it down to 3 or 4 that seemed to be the most reliable, but again, these things haven't been around for 30 years. We're not able to track data going backwards like that. And we didn't want to buy things that were 5 or 10 years old because they didn't have the latest capabilities. So we had to hedge, we had to gamble. Those gambles paid off.
Do you feel like gambling, in any industry is worth it sometimes?
Of course, you have to.
See what happens?
If you don't take risks, you don't succeed. I mean, you can stay in business without taking risks, but you can't be successful. That's part of Chad's and my balance is he's ultra conservative and risk averse, doesn't want to change anything unless we absolutely must. And I want to try everything. Neither one of us is well balanced. We balance each other in the discussion.
Happens.
Yeah.
You feel like that's a part of luck is just going to Vegas, throwing whatever down on the roulette table and see what happens.
You miss 100% of the shots you never take.
Boom.
I mean,
and that's a real. I mean, that really is, the essence of luck is just seeing. Let's see if it works or not.
You look at a Hail Mary or an end-to-end throw in basketball. It's down to the buzzer. And they're still on the other half of the court. There's no chance this ball is going in. And they throw, and they make it. And everybody goes nuts, right? Well, he got lucky. It went in. 99 times out of 100, that wouldn't happen. Well, it's 0 times out of 100 if you don't throw the ball.
They didn't try it.
Yeah. So you have to know your risk tolerance, but you got to take a shot.
In business, do you feel like that's kind of something maybe most owners, most people that are putting stuff out there, they're a little more conservative on. They don't want to try that.
Oh, yeah.
That you have done that?
There's phases you go through. When you're a startup, you'll try anything because you don't have a lot to lose. And there's not a lot of people's fate at stake. When there's 4 of us in the room, hey, should we give it a shot? Yeah, let's try. It's exciting. It's fun. You get to a certain size, you get to $3 or $5 or $6 million, and all of a sudden you got 50 people working for you, and you start to be a little more cautious because now you've got something. And a bad decision means you could lose that thing. You get a little bit bigger, it's even more risky. You look at me. So I'm over 50 years old. If something bad happens to this place, I have insurances and things like that, but wow, this is kind of like my whole life tied up in it financially. Its success or failure kind of determines what happens to me. So I don't want to gamble too much. But if I let the fear paralyze me, if I don't keep taking chances, if I don't keep pushing the envelope, we won't evolve. We won't keep getting better. And then we'll become stagnant. And then we won't be the company we are. We'll be boring.
So we've had the positives on obviously buying the building and on the machinery and everything like that. What's one shot you took that you're like, that was that was a bad idea?
First foray into 3D printing, if you can believe that. Everybody knows 3D printing is a win. You got a 3D print. It's awesome. We bought a 3D printer. It was one of the first 3D printers that could quickly change materials, because the 3D printers then in our industry, you picked a material and you stuck with that material because it was very costly and time consuming to switch materials in a printer. So if you're printing product A in this printer, you keep printing product A. If you want to print product B in this printer, you're going to have to shut it down, drain the tubes, clean the whole thing, get it set back up, put a new type of material in. It's very, the changeover of the production line, it's very costly. So we found a printer that would allow you to very quickly and easily switch materials. It was the first printer that easily did that. Lots of them do it now, but it was the first printer in that point in time that quickly allowed you to switch from one material to another. And we were like, oh, we're going to conquer the world. We got an edge. It's brand new. It just came out. Yeah, we're going to be able to do things other people can't do. We got that. We never printed a successful job on that printer of anything.
What was wrong with everything?
The technology wasn't there yet. It had been produced by a good company, but it was their first foray into printing, and it just didn't work the way they thought it would. It was super high maintenance. It turned out that the quick change created levels of variability that meant that we couldn't get the consistency we wanted. The flexibility meant we didn't get the accuracy. So we didn't. We used it to print junk, to print toys and widgets and stuff, but we couldn't use it in manufacturing at all.
What'd you take from that experience of going, oh, we took a chance, it didn't work out, our luck wasn't in our favor, but what did you kind of take from that in the next step you took in whatever you bought or whatever process you went?
Go smaller to learn. Today, if a new technology comes out, I want to find out what's the cheapest version of the molecular disposition integration manufacturing. There will be some new thing. I want to find the cheapest machine that does that and buy one, even if I know I'm never going to be able to use it, because I want to learn how it works. In our hands, in our setting, in front of us.
How it works in that environment.
Yeah.
However your organization is, how is that going to integrate into this?
I want to expose us to the technology so we can learn what our questions are, what our fears are, what our hopes are for the technology. And then with that knowledge, now we've cut our teeth on it. We understand a little bit about it. Now we're equipped to look at what's in the marketplace and see if one is right for us, because now we've got a little bit of experience with it. And by buying the cheapest one, there's going to be a lot wrong with it. That's okay, because you learn things that way.
Well, and then you don't feel like you're going to have that much invested in it. You can go in cheap and go, we can break this thing and see what happens.
Exactly. Get one that is cheap enough that you can break it to see how bad it gets when you break it. Right now, I ordered a food truck. I wanted to start being able to provide lunch on site.
Yeah.
So we were going to build a kitchen. We were going to buy a restaurant. We decided, you know what? Let's just buy a food truck. It's a very finite cost. We know what that cost is. We can dabble with it. We can play with it. We don't have to get it right the first time. It's inexpensive enough that we can screw it up a little bit for a while. I don't care if it's a boat or a jet ski or anything. I'm going to get an inexpensive one that I'm not going to be upset if I crash it on the rocks while I'm learning. Then once I've learned, I'll know, oh man, I want these characteristics. I want something big. I want sail. I want powered. I want cabins. I don't want cabins. I want anchorage. I want something I'll leave in a marina. I can learn what I want about a boat by playing with one, and that's cool.
So now you're a dental lab owner, and now you're even going into a food truck kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we've talked about you want to have this whole thing with a mashed potato or a potato company and everything else like that. Is this a chance of luck that you're like, maybe I end up being a food connoisseur type person? Is that kind of a chance you're taking?
No, but by exposing myself to more things, my luckdar will be able to scan for more opportunities, for different ways things could go right. And I'm going to stub my toe. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to do things wrong, and I'll learn from them, and then I'll do it better.
And
It's
I think that's a
across the
quote
board.
that everybody out there can take is a quote of something can go right. Everybody goes, something's going to go wrong.
Yeah, well.
Well, it could go wrong, could go right. Something could go right. So, in kind of wrapping everything up, what would you say to an entrepreneur, a new person out there that's starting a business in terms of, do you want to rely on luck? Do you want to rely on experience? Do you want to rely on, the backing you have? What would you say to somebody starting a new business right now in terms of their luck?
Stack the deck. Stack the deck in your favor. Have as much financial resources as you can. Have the best advisors that you can. Identify realistically what could go wrong and figure out what you'll do if it does go wrong. And look for the place that it could go right and leverage that.
Is that always having a plan Z? Everybody has plan A, plan B, but always go all the way to Z if...
Yep.
Yeah.
I've always got a backup plan.
S hits the fan, you got to run with it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Perfect. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Completing the Puzzle with Mr. Jason DeFranco. Thank you. And hopefully everybody out there is lucky. And you know what? We'd be lucky if you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, do all that, subscribe us. You can see us on iTunes. You can see us on Spotify. So hit us up, like us, follow us, and we're going to have a lot more episodes coming up. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Matt.